I'm Raphael Morales.
And I'm Gina Baxter.
And this is Fire on the Mountain.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about homelessness in Western North Carolina, early and absentee voting, which is ongoing right now for our May 17th primary, which Gina and I were both very fortunate enough to participate in. Was that yesterday?
Yesterday. Yes.
We're also going to talk about student loan debt and abortion access in our state and more. Our guest this week is a gig economy worker who drives for DoorDash and Uber Eats and others.
Billy
Blurgan. It's his real name. It's not an anonymous name. So without any further ado, let's light it up. Is that good?
So, news broke this week of a leaked draft of a majority opinion written by Justice Alito to reverse Roe versus Wade. A final decision is expected this summer. So, a little history of abortion access in recent North Carolina history. In 2010, Republicans in the state legislature passed the, quote, Women's Right to Know Act, which was yet another Republican law that is named the opposite of what it indicates, think Citizens United. And that law requires people seeking an abortion to undergo an ultrasound and to complete a 24-hour waiting period. I know that at least in 2013, the nurses asked patients to look at the screen to ensure they saw the ultrasound. I can tell you that it didn't make me feel better, and it certainly didn't make me change my mind, but so be it. In 2015, former Governor Pat McCrory signed a law extending that waiting period from 24 to 72 hours, just in case women weren't sure about their own decisions. Thanks, Pat. So the reversal that is potentially on the table would not make abortion illegal. What it would do instead is remove our constitutional protection to access abortion, which is what Roe made legal. Because of this, states would have the right to create their own laws around abortion access. These laws have already been drafted in many states and are called trigger laws. Roy Cooper has vetoed many attempts by state Republicans to restrict access to abortions in the state. Although North Carolina doesn't have any trigger laws in place right now, we don't expect to be above this fray as states create anti-choice laws that endanger women across the country. If you are seeking an abortion in North Carolina, you still have the right to get one. Make your appointment at any clinic at least 72 hours from the time you call, and take a friend with you. It's imperative that you don't go alone if at all possible for several safety and health reasons. If you or someone you know needs support during an appointment, DM us on Twitter or Instagram. It will take a village to get us through this.
After 30 years, Trinity Place Emergency Youth Shelter in Asheville is closing on May 13th. 2022. This decision was handed down to employees on April 15th, and funders had already been notified by the time staff was informed. According to Riley Carter, staff member at Trinity Place, the regional manager made the call about 2 weeks after approving raises for staff. Riley has created a GoFundMe to support the full-time and PRN caseworkers at the shelter, which we're going to link. Now other nonprofits working with homeless youth say they're feeling more pressure to fill the gap left by Trinity Place. Michael Absher with Only Hope WNC, who I actually went to high school with, said, quote, people need to understand that youth homelessness is still here. It's growing. We're currently still averaging between 200 to even 500 homeless kids in each county in the western region of North Carolina, he added. Last month, the Hendersonville Police Department identified 24 homeless camps in city limits, and our chief of police, Blair Myhand, said 10 were inactive. The city does not have an ordinance that prohibits camping in public places, so no actions were taken by police.
I just think it's interesting that we don't have an ordinance that prohibits camping in public places. So, we could go put up a tent somewhere?
Correct.
Let's do that.
Our Hendersonville chief of police, Blair Myhand, said, quote, we're not in the practice of kicking tents over or pushing people out. And he continued to say, we would much rather get people connected to resources, get them the help that they need, end quote. How wholesome is that?
Pretty wholesome. I hope that it's genuine. Fool me once, you know.
Elizabeth Moss, executive director of Interfaith Assistance Ministry.
Not the Scientology actress.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, different Elizabeth Moss. You guys might be confused because the Met Gala just happened, but it's this one that lives here.
The fucking Met Gala. So Elizabeth Moss, who is executive director of Interfaith Assistance Ministry, said that these folks are just so desperate. We've seen the cases increase twice as much as last year in the same period. However, according to reporting by WLOS, Asheville Mayor Esther Mannheimer said that she does not believe the city has seen a spike in its homeless population. Esther Mannheimer says that the numbers have remained steady for 2021 and that they show Asheville had 527 people experiencing homelessness. And unlike Hendersonville, Asheville does have a ban on camping within the city, so tents are being taken down as they're found by police. Mayor Mannheimer said, quote, "As long as there are spaces and shelters, the police should enforce the camping ban," end quote.
Absentee voting opened back on March 28th for the primary. Dr. Chris Cooper, Madison Distinguished Professor of Political Science and Public Affairs and director of the Public Policy Institute at Western North Carolina, shared on Twitter some early stats regarding turnout for absentee ballots. He said that roughly 4,000 absentee ballots had been accepted statewide through Thursday morning, and he said that it took until a week before Election Day for us to reach that number back in 2018. So at this point in 2018, we were only 2,300 ballots in. He also said that about 30,000 people cast ballots on Thursday, the first day of early voting, compared to 18,000 on the first day of early voting for 2008. So that's almost double. He also shared that the state's 11th congressional district here in the mountains is outpacing the rest of the state with just over 600 absentee ballots accepted so far. So keep voting, y'all. We're turning them out faster than any other region, and I think that's something to be really proud of. So as far as early voting in North Carolina, voters can cast a ballot at any early voting site in their county. You can find sites and hours in every North Carolina county using the search tool at ncsbe.gov. That's the North Carolina State Board of Elections website.
Sample ballots for the primary election are available through Voter Research Tool. The state board doesn't provide specific information about candidates, so you'll need to look them up on your own. And we are happy to provide information on any candidate if anyone was to reach out via links, not just to their websites, but interviews, videos. I know at least definitely on my end, and I'm sure on Gina's end, we've done a lot of research between the two of us, and we're happy to provide research without bias, let's say. If you want information and you're curious about if you want any information and you're curious about anything,
we're sticking with it.
Sticking to it. Any of the candidates, we happily find that for you.
Yeah, we want y'all to vote. So, however we can help make that happen, we got to get out there. If you missed the regular voter registration deadline, which was April 22nd, you can register and vote at the same time during early voting. So you can stop into an early voting location, register to vote, and vote that day. You have to attest to your eligibility to vote and provide proof of where you live. So there are a few things that you would need to bring, but as long as you have those things, you're able to go ahead and register and get your vote in.
So if you live in Henderson County, according to the Henderson County Board of Elections 2022 primary early voting schedule, your voting locations are the Henderson County Board of Elections at 75 East Central Street in Hendersonville. That's 28792. Flat Rock Village Hall at 110 Village Center Drive in Flat Rock, North Carolina, 28731. At the Etowah Library at 101 Brickyard Road in Etowah, 28729, and at Fletcher Town Hall at 300 Old Cane Creek Road, Fletcher, North Carolina, 28732. When you check in to vote at an early voting site, you may want to update your name or address within the same county if necessary. You may not change your party affiliation at an early voting site, though, during a primary election.
Also, if you requested an absentee ballot, you don't have to use it. You can still vote early in person, and you don't have to. You can just throw your absentee ballot away. You're not beholden to it.
Just as a reminder to unaffiliated voters listening to the podcast, you can pull either a Democratic or a Republican ballot, but you cannot pull both in North Carolina because we're not Alaska. And if you feel harassed or intimidated, you should notify an election official immediately. Also, shoot me a text.
Yeah, y'all know what to do, right? One last reminder is that voters at early voting sites are entitled to the same assistance as voters at a voting place on Election Day. So if you're early voting, you have the same rights and assistances as if you were voting with everybody else on the general election. So if there's anything that's going on that you feel like wouldn't be happening on Election Day, that's your right to advocate for yourself.
And actually, another reminder on top of that, too, a lot of people out here are going to be really proud of how they cast their vote. They're going to want to inspire others to come out and do so, take pictures, selfies at their voting location. However, North Carolina law does prohibit photographing or videotaping voted ballots. So voters may use electronic devices in the voting booth to access a slate card or candidate information, but they cannot use devices to communicate with anyone or take photographs of their ballot.
We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will have our interview with Billy Blorgen, as well as our T9 word segment, unless we're going to do that before this break. I'm not sure.
Probably do after, I think.
This episode is brought to you by Oklawaha Brewing Company. Oklawaha Brewing is a nano brewery and taproom committed to brewing high-quality beer in a vibrant atmosphere and is conveniently located in downtown Hendersonville. Drop in sometime and check it out.
Tell us who you are and tell us who you are and what you do.
Hey, I'm Billy, and I'm an independent contractor, and I do DoorDash and GrubHub and Uber Eats and such and more.
How? When did you start? When did you start doing that?
It was kind of a backup plan because it's really easy to get hired because you're just dealing with a computer program that hires you. You don't really have to talk to anybody. You send pictures of your ID. And you send pictures of your registration, and they do a background check immediately through their computer system and hire you on the spot. Literally, I was hired by a computer program.
When were you hired?
I think I applied in maybe 2017, and I had it as a backup for bartending gigs. And when COVID came around, I had 3 different bartending gigs that shut their doors, one on top of another. So I started taking the DoorDash and Uber Eats gig a lot more serious, and then it just blew up. I mean, it was busy as can be.
And we're recording this in Hendersonville right now, but you really started taking off with that when you were in Asheville.
Yeah, and I still do the Asheville market, and I do Hendersonville market, and if I want to change the scenery, I'll go and hit the Greenville market, and that's the beauty of it. You can pretty much design your day around it. Right?
When you say that, you just, for people that don't know how, let's just take DoorDash, for example. How does DoorDash work for you as a driver? Like a day in the life at DoorDash, what does that look like?
Well, recently, the Hendersonville market has been a little bit saturated to where, the mapping system won't let you clock in if they have enough drivers on board, which I appreciate that because when I'm on, I would rather be, a ratio of them allowing people to work and not bring on too many people to where you're not getting any orders and you've got 300 people sitting around in parking lots waiting for an order. But now, before I go to bed, I can go on and schedule the next day before other people get on, and it will let me clock in anytime I want pretty much the next day if I schedule it. But if you wait to clock on the next day and it's really busy, you might not get to clock in.
So you can basically make your own schedule, not just the way people think where you just like, log into an app and use it whenever, but you can actually set yourself up, like sign in for the next day.
Yeah, I could literally schedule a whole week, and once that is scheduled in their system, I am guaranteed that shift, and nobody can clock in ahead of me. But you also can just clock in whenever you want if it's not saturated with drivers in that area. Buncombe County, that mapping system is always available. If I went and crossed into Buncombe County, you could probably clock in anytime you wanted because it's not as saturated, or the market's a lot bigger to where even if there are a lot of drivers, it's still busy enough in their ratio of how they do it. But Greenville, the same. You can go to Greenville, and the second you get in Greenville, it'll let you clock in. Hendersonville's a little different.
How long have you noticed that kind of saturation in Hendersonville?
It's up and down, and you notice it because there's times where you'll turn on the app and it'll offer you like $900 to bring in friends to start door dashing, and then sometimes they won't let that happen, and that means they're probably hired up because they're not offering incentive to bring people in. But right now, there's incentive for Hendersonville drivers.
I kind of want to do that.
I love it. If nothing else, it's beautiful to have as a backup.
Right.
Especially how topsy-turvy, a lot of industry is now. And it turned into a career for me. So I highly advise it. I just, I'm not scared of the competition in a sense. It's an incredible job.
So when you say there's incentive, what do you mean by incentive, like in this market where we are?
You bring somebody in and they make a certain amount. They stay with it long enough for it to be worth it to them. I think they have to be involved with a certain amount of orders a week for 3 months. You get $900 for referring that person in.
So I think I saw a post online from Oscar Blues Brewing where they now have like $1,000 sign-on bonus where if you work at Oscar Blues and you get a friend and they fill out an application and they're hired, then after 90 days, both you and the friend get $1,000 on your check. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of incentive like that going around. I notice being out and about driving, I see it in a lot of industrial locations also.
This is probably for later, but so if I want to try to do that, we should talk about.
Yeah, because I'll take the referral.
Okay, hell yeah. That's awesome. Win-win, right?
Yeah, totally.
Might as well.
Yeah.
So it's 2020. All the bar gigs have closed their doors. Options are limited. That's a story that we've heard and we've seen play out all across the country, not just with bars, but people in like all walks of life. Like the pandemic happens and people just don't have anywhere to go for income, and you turned on DoorDash and you saw it blowing up and everything. Take us to like that moment when you first started engaging with DoorDash, like during the pandemic. Like what was that like?
Well, you start getting real active in it, and you start seeing the ceiling of income that you can make, and it's almost intoxicating. You get real inclined to get up early and make a really long day of it, because for all you know, you might clock $300 into your bank account by 10 o'clock that night, and that starts getting intoxicating, bringing in more money than you really ever made in your life, at a time that a lot of people are having a hard time having jobs and keeping jobs, and so I mean I caught up on a lot of debt and bills and things from my past as well.
The human interaction aspect of it too. Like, you have incredibly unique one-on-one experiences with folks that you've delivered for kind of like routinely. Can you, or would you be interested in sharing some of those experiences?
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes back to like when we were talking about how this whole system can be demonized, and the positive, actually beautiful benefits of it. Starts off in COVID, people are scared to go out in public, and they want to stay home, and they can have food delivered to them. That's a beautiful thing. And then I started noticing that a lot of my regulars I got to know were handicapped, and then I met a couple blind people that I got to where we built trust enough to where I was setting up their dinners and their dinner at their table for them. Yeah, there's a lot of really positive things that go along. Like,
And does DoorDash have anything to say about that? Like, as far as going into people's home, like, is that cool? And they're
I have never had a person-to-person conversation about rules of any type. I've never signed my name to anything with DoorDash. I am an independent contractor, so there might be a lot of legal jargon made up for that situation, but I've never looked into it, and maybe I should to protect myself. But I think it's kind of to each his own, whatever you feel comfortable. The beauty of it, back in the day when people were delivering pizzas before the internet, it was a dangerous situation because people were making phone calls and giving addresses and paying with cash. And, there's no verification at that time that you're going to a legit address, and you're carrying around cash to make change, and it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
The beauty of the system now is everything's verified. If you get an account with DoorDash, they verify your credit card, your contact information, your address. It goes through a mapping system to make sure that you are at the address, your particular phone that you're using is at the address that you're saying it is at. It's really protected, so you just feel like they kind of have your back in a sense of referencing where you're going and where you've been. It's a lot less dangerous than food delivery back in the day.
Yeah, so it comes with some protection, but it's also it also sounds like any liability might be on the driver if something does happen, because there's no coverage for anything like that. So kind of a give and take of that independent contractor.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know how much damage you could get in yourself into, and a lot of the times I won't really even, 95% of my deliveries, I'm just leaving food at a door, knocking and getting back in my car. I don't even see people. You could go a whole day without even having any kind of communication with somebody, but like going back to the relationships with some handicapped people or blind people, they know I'm coming and I know where I'm going, and we've developed a relationship of trust, and I know what they need, in the sense of like setting up their order for them, and I gladly do it. And I don't feel any danger after developing a relationship with somebody going into their house.
Is this a normal thing? Like, is this common for? Is it like in your experience? Have you?
It's hard to know because, like I say, I wake up and open an app and I go about my way. And I don't really have a whole lot of support group or anything. There are chat groups in every town for DoorDash and Uber Eats, and they're all ridiculous, and I don't really want any part of it. So it's hard to really know what's going on out there outside my day and the way I handle things. I don't really. I talk to drivers waiting for food occasionally, but.
What's ridiculous about the chat groups?
Just drama and,
Gotcha.
Toxic, conversation about, hating this and disliking this, and
Not helpful.
No, definitely not. Like I kind of like being on my own little island and just doing my own thing and, making my day as beautiful as possible out and about, getting some sun, getting some air, listening to tunes.
I just imagine you with like the top down, like the wind in your hair, with a bag full of like meds and like some tacos, and you're just like just rolling up on a house, like setting a table and saying hi, and then getting back out in your car, and like now it's time to go pick up some shoes for maybe some cleats or something for a soccer practice, because it's not just food. It's like
Yeah, it's getting just wide open. People like having things delivered to them. It's kind of the new thing, and if you feel in danger of being out in society, which a lot of people have, health issues that where I could see where they would be a little nervous about getting out and about. It's perfect for them, you pretty much can get almost anything delivered. I mean, they're trying to get me to sign on selling alcohol, and I am not getting involved in that because I've been a bartender and I know the legal extent of that whole thing. And you check an ID and it's fake, and you serve underagers doing DoorDash, you can get in a whole lot of trouble, and you don't have to sign on to that, and I'm not going to. Dealing with ALE as a bartender, that is all on me. If I put alcohol in an underage kid's hands, he could order with his mom's app, and it all looks legit until you get to the door and you've got an 18-year-old kid standing in the doorway, and you're checking his ID. And then, you just spent 40 minutes going and purchasing the alcohol and taking it all the way to the address.
Yeah.
And then there's a chance that you feel uncomfortable about finishing the deal, and you just wasted a lot of time and energy.
What does that look like? What does it look like if you show up and in that whole scenario, like if that happens, what does it mean for you? Like, what do you do with the booze? Like
exactly. That's why I'm not signing on to it.
Is there also a sign-on thing for delivering medication too, where you take that on as a responsibility?
No, I've not seen that, and that would be getting into probably a lot more legal loopholes of legality. I don't know if there's any type of delivery other than maybe the store itself helping elderly, or having a system where they're already a customer that's dealt with the pharmacy and they know them personally and help them, but I wouldn't sign on to that, and I'm not signing on to delivering alcohol. And sometimes your conscience is weighed on pretty heavy, just even delivering 3 packs of Red Bull and 12 bags of Doritos and a bunch of candy rope to a kid, that you just feel like you're just delivering toxic poison to children at times.
I think it's gonna be wild to hear what happened with COVID and like the gig economy, because it blew the fuck up.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, you're basically telling people they need to stay home and they have to eat. The food industry is always going to be around. I mean,
yeah,
that's why I made a career of it since I was 18, because people will always eat, and if they have a little bit of spare money, they will go out to eat just to get out of the house, and that's where they're going to spend their money, is going out to dinner at times, and that's never going to go away.
And I remember
necessity.
during COVID, the restaurants that survived were the ones that could adapt to like remote ordering and everything.
You see it, the restaurants that adapted to the DoorDash type business, they literally turned into being a dine-in restaurant to a takeout restaurant, and some of them said they were making more just doing takeout than they ever did being a full-service restaurant, and they're not paying for near the staff. And I've seen a lot of restaurants not even go back. I mean, there's still a lot of dining rooms still closed because they love the takeout thing. They're making money. They're not paying staff. It's easy cleanup. It's easy pay.
I mean, at that point, like, if you don't have the staff and you don't have the interest in hiring them, because clearly like takeout is more profitable and it's safer.
Yeah.
It almost makes sense to like change the business model and do away with the dining room and just, have a kitchen and to deliver things out of the kitchen. Do you see like an increase of like that sort of like restaurant style happening where people are just cooking and then it's all delivery and no dine-in?
Yeah, there's a lot of restaurants that were busy dine-in restaurants that literally still to this day are takeout only. But the ones that are opening their dining rooms, it's not as concentrated, and there's not as much competition because there's a lot of restaurants not opening their doors. So I mean, there's dining rooms that are packing out, lines around the restaurant, especially on weekends, because there's not as many restaurants open. Because there's a lot of restaurants that didn't make it.
So there's this one restaurant that I will sometimes DoorDash from at my work, and I work downtown Hendersonville. I'm not going to say the restaurant, but there was one restaurant where literally I ordered the food and it showed up at work 8 minutes later. Like, obviously it was just apps, but like they are so well equipped now to serve the DoorDash before they serve the seated customers, because they have a higher sales volume of the people ordering DoorDash than they do the customers that are in the restaurant.
That goes from restaurant to restaurant. There's some restaurants the second you walk into a restaurant, you can tell how well managed it is just by the efficiency of their takeout. And takeout's a real easy thing to not keep on your radar and kind of let it do its own thing. And those types of restaurants that aren't well managed, you can sit there for 40 minutes waiting on a takeout while you're watching food hit the dining room over and over and over, because there's nobody watching over the kitchen, and the kitchen is literally passing DoorDash tickets down the line and taking care of their immediate guests. And then, you got other restaurants where their takeout is just, there's 3 people working it, taking it out to the cars, bags are, organized on a rack and coming out fluently. And, it's really according to management of that restaurant. I feel like well-managed places know that they don't want 10 DoorDash drivers at their front door with guests coming in, waiting on food. They want you out, and they've gotten it to where, it's pretty speedy trying to get these DoorDashers out of your lobby when you have guests coming in to dine in. You don't want a bunch of people standing around in your airspace, waiting on food. So, I feel like a lot of these restaurants have gotten their takeout down to a science, and they probably weren't even really paying attention to their takeout business before. And now it's like, if you're a really well-run restaurant, you're taking care of your dining room and your takeout, equally, and you're really putting food out.
So if the dining rooms are open and takeout's still going on, they have to be prepared to do double the volume that they were doing before.
You're probably staffing your kitchen maybe a little more.
Right.
And that'd be smart.
Right.
And,
especially in a time where people want jobs.
And then, if you've got a big saturation of drivers, you're really the closest driver to that restaurant. The computer is the mainframe of DoorDash knows who is closest to the restaurant by your phone pings, and you will get offered that order. So, there's a lot of times I get an order and I'm literally in the parking lot already. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, cool, I'll take that, And so that's probably what happened with you. Like, literally, the driver was right there. He got pinged, went in, the food was already ready, and then you're right down the street. Really just took as far as you were from the restaurant. It's a tourist town, and you get near the airport, and you'll get these deliveries that just blow your mind. They'll be like Holiday Inn on Airport Road, and they'll order Carrabba's, and it's literally across the street. They could literally walk to it themselves, but they're tourists. I don't even think they have a clue that the Carrabba's is right there, and they just want Carrabba's, and they're just getting online. It's like, oh, look, honey, Carrabba's, and you could throw a Frisbee to it, but they're just settled in their hotel. They're not even really thinking about what's around them. They just want food delivered to them. So, I mean, literally it takes a minute. I mean, literally I'll cross a street with food and make $8. It's pretty common, especially weekends.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense that people get settled into like vacation mode.
Yeah.
Or they don't. Yeah, they're not from here. They don't
the
know.
restaurant's literally in the center where their hotel is, and
Yeah.
I'm delivering it for them. Like they could literally just walk to the restaurant. Like they don't even have to drive.
And they're paying at least $10
Oh yeah,
on
yeah,
top
totally.
of
Yeah,
their food
I
cost.
think I've made a $15 delivery, literally delivering from a restaurant to a hotel that's in the same complex? Sharing a parking lot.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It happens more than you'd think. It's insane. Like,
So what we talked about on last week's episode was that there were reports from Intuit in 2010, so before we knew anything about COVID, of course, that estimated that between 20 and 30% of the U.S. workforce would be categorized as independent contractors that year, and then they estimated that by 2020 we would be above 40%. So the numbers that we have now say that 36% of all U.S. workers identify as members of the gig economy or independent contractors.
interesting.
Yeah, that's over a third.
Yeah,
That's wild to me.
it is.
Does that track with what you...
I would have
What you
never
see?
thought about that figure, and the reason I'm blown away it's so high is because, when you try to apply for a mortgage or a car loan, when you're an independent contractor, your numbers are very skewed because you don't show what you're making like a person that's working a normal job, and their taxes are taken out immediately by an employer. And you are going back in your taxes and you are applying a lot of things to cover miles and gas and cars and tires and things that you use for your work. And when you accommodate for all those numbers at the end of the year, it barely shows on paper that you made any money. And when you try to buy a house with a mortgage or a car payment, banks look really down on that. They want to see a high source of income, and on paper you're not showing that. So it blows my mind that it's like close to 40-50% of the workforce in America has the same type of paperwork and tax cuts, like that.
Yeah.
Like,
So you file like a 1099?
yeah.
Okay.
And they treat you like you're kind of, a hassle, and and so that's mind-boggling that 40% of the workforce is independent contractor, and I'm going in and they're treating me like I'm some, like hassle to them that day because on paper I don't make enough money for them,
Is it? And just thinking out loud here. It seems like with the gig economy, there's sort of like, I don't want to call it a stigma, but there's some sort of like social awareness around the idea that if you are doing the gig economy, it is not, and I'm putting air quotations here, it is not a real job to like banking institutions or like, loan officers and everything like that. Like
that's the way you're treated.
Yeah. But now we've got receipts to see that like a third of the American workforce is doing this.
Yeah.
So we're kind of behind the curb as far as like financial institutions are concerned. We're kind of behind the curb on accommodating that
For
labor
sure.
force.
I agree with that, and I've thought about that a lot because I just bought a car and just started a new car loan, and the hoops that I had to go through because I'm an independent contractor is pretty mind-boggling. When it really shows, on paper from the beginning that you make a pretty good amount of money, but you do have to claim your expenses, or you're going to get taxed for things that you don't deserve to be taxed on because you did pay out for expenses, and you do deserve to get a break on your taxes over that. So you can look good on paper if you want and not claim things, and you'll end up spending $8,000 in taxes. But it looks great on paper.
Good.
Yeah.
But then you don't then you have less money to actually do the thing, like pay the mortgage loan.
Yeah,
or pay
exactly.
The car
Yeah,
loan.
yeah. It's like you could pay the $8,000 to the government, or you could claim what you should claim and figure out how you're going to get a loan, elsewhere. And that's where credit comes along. Your credit gets to be really important when you're an independent contractor, because that's what you have to show at the bank, that you are credible to them.
Right.
It might not look like it on paper, but your credit becomes more valuable when you are claiming a lot of your income every year, and on paper it shows that you're not making a whole lot of money yearly. When you have good credit, they almost don't even care about that anymore. They go by credit alone.
Yeah, this is giving me a lot of flashbacks to like working in the service industry, where
same thing almost.
It looks like you made $600 a month, but you made $2,500, but you don't have anything to show for it on paper.
Because we got really good at just claiming our credit card tips.
We did get really good at it. Yeah.
It's like,
what? Come for us. What?
What? Come on. What? My name's Billy, and I live in Hendersonville.
Billy Blorgan, you heard it here, IRS. What is the craziest delivery that you have ever experienced?
There was an incident that I picked up an order at CVS, and it ended up being a pregnancy test and a bag of Doritos. And I went to the counter, and the girl at the counter saw it as a DoorDash, and we were just dying. And it ended up going to a restaurant on Airport Road in Asheville, and the directions were to be discreet, and that they would meet me outside. And so I pull up, and there's a posse full of girls waiting for me to pull up. And I guess this girl wanted to take the test before her shift that night.
Hey, if you're listening, girl at the restaurant on Airport Road, I see you. I respect you. I hope everything's okay. We're thinking about you.
She helped me with an order a couple months later, and it ended up negative.
Congratulations, or not,
And
whatever you want.
And she was a good sport, because I told her the whole jokey factor of the girl at Walgreens thinking it's the funniest thing. And every time I go into Walgreens from then on out, it's referenced and asking me if I'm in for a pregnancy test. And it's still an ongoing joke.
I love the, either way, that was probably the most intense bag of Doritos that she may have ever. So, what is the most common delivery that you do with DoorDash?
Yeah, it's kind of depending on the day of the week. On a Friday or Saturday night, you get a whole lot of Red Bull, salty treats, sugary treat orders over and over and over. I in my head, I am imagining kids having babysitters, and they've got control of their mom's DoorDash account, and their mom's like, don't go over $30, thinking they're going to order like food, and they actually ordered sugar and salt and taurine.
So to be clear, Friday and Saturday nights is Doritos, Red Bull, Funyuns,
and
peanuts.
Yeah,
maybe not even peanuts, I guess.
And sour ropes of some type. It's constant.
So you were saying before that you started taking deliveries from like grocers, like Harris Teeter. You said just started doing that. Are we talking like whole grocery orders where they don't want to go to the store and you're doing the grocery shopping for them?
I found that it seems like lost items for a recipe that they thought they might have had, or got to where they're in the middle of cooking something and they can't leave the kitchen. They're like, oh my God, I need basil for this. And, a lot of times it really is like basil or an onion or peppers or such. Like,
let's say I'm cooking something with basil and I need that basil and I ain't got that basil.
Yeah.
I
bring that basil.
If you're bringing that basil, how much What is the convenience charge in my life to have you deliver that?
That's
basil?
the thing, because, like, again, I am tied into an app, and I see my side, and I get my offer. DoorDash knows the whole what's going where and where the money is going. I don't. I get offered a certain amount of money to go pick up a certain thing, and at the time, I don't even know how much the order is. I'm just taking the order because I'm told what I get for it. I could be picking up a $200 order. I could be picking up a $3 order. I don't really know what I'm picking up. I just know that I'm making $12 for myself on that order, and I say yes or no to it. And then you get into the logistics of what you're where you're going, what you're picking up. I pretty much know how many miles I got to drive and how much money I'm being offered to drive that. And I've gotten to where I pretty much just, if the money is $2 or $3 more than the miles, I'll usually take it. If it's 8 miles round trip to the store and to the house, and they're offering $12 for that, I'll take that. If it's opposite, if it's 12 miles and they're offering $8 for a round trip, 12-mile drive, I'm not taking it. That's all I really know. That's what I see.
Yeah. What would you say to people that are thinking about doing this work?
Well, your boss is your own self-discipline. A lot of younger kids, when all of a sudden they're not forced to do things, they might take a lot of time off and get to where, they fall behind. The only thing I answer to is my own self-discipline, and there's days that you might not feel that great, but you still get yourself out there because you have bills to pay, I just feel like a lot of younger kids might not have developed self-discipline and maturity to where, they can make a career of it. A lot of people get into this, and it's just not for them. I see a lot of people get into it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they're gone. It seems like it takes a special person to learn how to make it a career, and it just seems like it's cut and dry. Like you're just going to go out and get in your car and take orders. You learn hot spots. You learn restaurants that you want to do business with, and restaurants that are a waste of your time. You really do learn the system and the region to actually start making good money. It's tough to make money if you don't know the area and you don't know the restaurant scheme and which restaurants you're going to be waiting for an hour for food and which restaurants are going to have your food ready immediately. And so, I mean, if you can make it through, a lot of that failure with, time element and, dealing with bad restaurants and stuff, if you can make it through that and really learn how to accomplish, making a good day of it and continuing making a good day of it, it's a great job. But it comes down to just literally self-discipline. If you don't have that yet in your life, it might be a tough job to have as a kid. I don't know.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your
thank
insight
you.
about it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Gina, real quick, before we keep going, have you seen Real Jam Productions? It's our local videography company right here in Hendersonville.
I have, and they are awesome. The way they tell a story is awesome, and they really capture the essence of what's going on,
Yeah, and it's not like an advertisement. It's a story that connects and resonates. When I go to places and buy things, it's mostly because I vibe with the mission. If it's a shitty owner who takes advantage of their customers or sees us or their employees as a commodity, then I'm out. And I want to know who I'm supporting and know that they have a genuinely honest and authentic vibe before I give them my money.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Amy and Jay at Real Jam Productions, you can definitely feel that with them. If I was a business owner or had a project that I needed to get across to the public, I would go with Real Jam.
And that's spelled out REEL Jam Productions for folks at home.
Stay real, love your story. Check out realjamproductions.com and get 20% off your next video project by emailing them that you heard about them here on the podcast.
Again, that's REELJAM Productions.com.
This is the part of the show where we leverage our millennial identities to add levity in a segment we're calling What's the T9 Word? Bird. This week's T9 word is AITA, or Am I the Asshole? Am I the asshole if I don't support student loan debt cancellation? Raph, what's your take?
I think it's first off, I think it's funny that the T9 word chosen for this, because you can almost apply like LOL or WTF or like ROTFL. All of these things could be applied to the conversation about student loan debt forgiveness or cancellation. I just think that your take on student loan debt is super indicative of your takes on other shit. I think that I agree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when she says that we can support things we don't directly benefit from. And she went on to say that student loan cancellation should be Biden's priority, and his hesitation has demoralized a very critical voting bloc. I think that's legitimate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a big part of his platform and a reason a lot of us voted for him. And it's a big deal that he hasn't followed through at all.
There is a laundry list of... we're not going to make this about Biden. I will just say, though, if I see you out in these streets and we just so happen to talk about student loan debt cancellation, whatever you say... I personally believe fundamentally is indicative of who you are as a person, because we're having conversations about empathy. We're having conversations about culture, about our society, political, just by asking the question. There's so much nuance happening there. And I think that it's also indicative of the capacity that you have to care about how badly someone else needs to suffer in order for you to succeed.
I absolutely agree. I think that there's been a lot of talk on Twitter lately about making analogies that maybe aren't exactly accurate, but I find a lot of comfort in them. Like, I was treated for cancer and now there's a cure, and I don't want anyone else to have it because I suffered. I'm talking about student loans. That level of disconnect around wanting other people to succeed and focusing on the capitalist entities that fund student loans.
Yeah, like, so in a nutshell, student loan debt is basically one guy is like, I loan you $10,000. You owe that back to me. But there's like no onus on the lender to be like, you loaned a fucking child $10,000. Why don't you learn some financial responsibility? Why is the child being penalized for your predatory fucking behavior? And what more, this isn't some kind of progressive leftist narrative. This is common sense. So much of this shit is just so pro forma in most of the modern world. And we are so behind the curve because of our wanton disregard for humanity, our bottomless lust for dollar over everything else. And it's pervasive. It's getting in our soul and it's getting in our bones. This isn't a one-size-fits-all. I get that it's complicated.
The system is broken. And the fact that people support Sally Mae over their literal neighbors. I mean, Sally Mae's fine, y'all. You guys don't have to back it up. They're going to make it. They don't need us. And to act like we owe them some kind of special treatment because their predatory lending habits have gotten them to a place where we can't afford to pay them back because we wanted to get an education because that's what we were taught to do. Give me a fucking break.
In recent weeks, senior Biden aides have examined limiting the relief to people who earned less than either $125,000 a year or $150,000 a year as individual filers the previous year, or double that basically for couples filing jointly, which is just arbitrary as fuck. That, I mean, I don't know why is it a conversation? Why does it matter? Just get rid of it. Clean slate this shit. Like
because Biden is a centrist.
You know what? I don't actually like that we did AITA for this, because yes, I am. It's rhetorical. It's like this. We could have picked a different one. Like, I'm absolutely that asshole. I'm gonna get aggro as fuck about the whole student debt thing. If you'd like to support our show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/fireonthemountain.
Thank you all so much for listening.
Cool. Is that good?